Right, hey guys, how are we doing? Back another video from Annie News. We got cook content for Solo Leveling episode 9. If you want to see my reaction to Solo Leveling episode 9, links in the description to the Patreon page. But my god, what an episode. This was so freaking cool. It was epic, it was dark, and I'm really intrigued to see what was potentially left out, what was potentially added, which seems to be the thing now. It seems to be that they're adding stuff, or they're throwing in stuff that's further down the line, quicker, or introducing people in a different way. I thought this was boss. The way they approached the dungeon and the reveal that the B rank killed people in the dungeons and stuff, and mate, with all of them getting together, and then right. Anyway, let's get into it.
Sung vs. Kang was definitely a nice bit of action most would call the highlight of the episode, but
It was boss. It was so cool.
there was actually something crazier which should have come after. I was personally curious to see whether the anime would include it or not, but unfortunately it looks like they decided not to.
Huh.
Whether it be because the scene was too dark, or simply due to not enough time in the episode, the scene in question was one which emphasized the part of Sung that died that day.
Oh.
It was a ruthless moment that I think paints a better picture of who Sung is becoming right now. So, as I talk about that and the extra details from the fight, I hope you'll enjoy hearing what was left out from this amazing episode.
As always.
And if you did, consider leaving a like or even subscribing.
Yeah, just go subscribe to Annie News. I love these videos.
Episode 9. You've Been Hiding Your Skills.
Yo.
Covering chapters 29 to 34 of the manhwa and
Whoa, that's more than normal. That's 5.
chapters 31 to 35 of the web novel.
Okay.
It was even before Sung leveled that he could handle these goblins, but the way he did here with both ease and fluidity was a clear difference between his old self and what he was now.
So cool to see, though.
He had tried to hide said difference by minimizing his power, but even that wasn't enough for the others to not take notice of him.
Yeah, you go into, aren't you? You've been through all these dungeons with him in the past. Now it's like, he actually just killed that goblin there.
So when Juhi did inevitably ask how he got so much stronger, the only answer Sung could give was that he'd been running a lot. Mr. Song knew that it had to be more than that, but he knew well before this that something was different about Sung.
The aura and
Sung
that, yeah.
also wasn't the only person Mr. Song had taken notice of, since in the manhwa Juhi was displaying the complete opposite of Sung. She was trembling in fear in the face of what were essentially the weakest monsters.
Oh, wow, okay, yeah, that would have been interesting to see.
A bad look for sure considering how high ranked she was. It was a clear indication her trauma went deep, and if it
Yeah, she's
continued to be
B-rank,
something
actually.
she couldn't handle, then retirement was unfortunately the only option available to
B-rank
her.
healer?
Now, a minor setback that came with fighting these weakest monsters was the fact that they didn't even provide experience anymore. No matter how many Sung
Oh.
fought and how many he killed, he unfortunately wouldn't be able to level up from them.
So the system's not letting him just, farm, low XP now. It's like he's got to be fighting higher up stuff to gain that. Oh, wow.
They were simply too weak to provide any value whatsoever. This led Sung to consider leaving the association, since if all raids were just going to be more of this, then what point would there be to continue doing them? He no longer needed to rely on the association to take care of his mother, so if the experience was elsewhere and money no longer a problem, leaving the association would just give him more freedom to level up the way that he wanted.
Interesting.
It was a thought he would contemplate as he ventured deeper into the dungeon. Fast forward to after the groups had split, and it was in the manhwa where we got a bit more insight into the way Kang perceived everything. He had essentially compared goblins to children and equated the two as equals, since to him both were nothing more than pesky insects.
That's horrible. Ew.
In fact, humans in general were just a lower subspecies to him. He would then ask if the criminals were capable of killing children the same way they killed these goblins, and to no surprise, all of them just said yes.
Oh, that's the actual conversation. It was something similar to that, but not talking about children. But that,
The thing is, I think the purpose of having Kang agree with them on this was to show he treated human life the same way that these criminals did. They were just as useless to him as the lives of all the monsters he's killed. They would then have this cool panel leading into the reveal of how he planned to do the cover-up, and that would lead into the next scene with Kim. What's interesting to note about Kim is that in the novels his entire presence was pretty much removed from it. There was no emotional reflection or tragic death, but instead just a brief scene where Sung found his body after killing Kang.
Whoa, alright. Nah, because I really loved how he came to the decision that he really wanted to apologize and then nearly didn't. But then through her healing him, he was able to, before dying, say how sorry he was. And then he's like, no, because I want to be angry at you. I loved
This
it.
is completely different to the manhwa since it was here they really leaned into the more dramatic side of things. In fact, I had actually found Kim's reflection to be a lot more serious here since you could sense he truly believed himself to be a disgrace for what he did. This was highlighted even more so during his death since, in addition to throwing the scene of him and his daughter right here in the moment, the way it's read and the way it scrolls down leads to one of the best artistic reveals in the series so far. What I mean is that this scene, which was shown as filler in the last episode, was used here as build-up to add to Kim's tragedy.
Oh.
The conversation has no visuals, so it leaves everything to the imagination, then out of nowhere the speech bubbles start to turn red. This goes down longer and longer, then that red, which was just a small trail in the beginning, is now a giant pool of blood leading to Kim's body.
Whoa.
It's an amazing reveal, which I know they tried to emulate in the anime, but this was something that only the manhwa could do.
I was going to say, that's actually
I
pretty
found
cool.
Kim's
That's
apology
decent.
to be a lot more emotional in the manhwa too, because in addition to Sung seeming truly desperate, Kim's genuine apology was accentuated by a smile showing he meant it. He couldn't bow his head because he knew he'd die if he did, but despite all that, he was still able to muster out a smile and demonstrate his remorse anyway. I think it was this combined with the manhwa's more detailed expressions that made me more emotionally invested when I was reading it. That's not to say the anime didn't do it well either, but I had to give props to the manhwa for making full use of the medium it's on. Switching back to the details from the novel now though, there was a massive difference in the way Kang had tried to ambush them here. In the manhwa, he had attacked immediately, but in the novel, Kang would make it seem like it was him who had screamed out for help. He was covered in blood, kneeling on the ground, yelling at Sung and the others to watch out for the criminals.
Oh.
He had essentially made it seem like they jumped him, then collapsed on the ground right there to feign an injury.
Oh,
This,
what a
of course,
sneaky
led
bastard.
Juhi
What a sneaky bastard.
to run straight to him since, while yes, she was definitely traumatized, as someone who took pride as a B-rank healer, that responsibility to others triumphed over everything. Even if there were enemies around and the situation was dangerous, Juhi would always run to heal those who needed it, thus the reason she took the risk with Kang. This was exactly what Kang was hoping for though, since Juhi was after all the only person on the same level as him. You see, he knew taking out the lower ranks would be easy, so the safest and best option for him was to get Juhi first with a surprise attack. So, right as she would enter within his range, that's when Kang would jump from his position and try to grab her throat. He would thrust a magically empowered hand straight towards her, only for it to be stopped right before it could reach its target.
That was cool.
Naturally, such a feat was definitely impressive, but as soon as Kang saw it was from an association hunter, his sadistic smile quickly changed to a frown. What he thought was about to be some decent competition was nothing more than a hunter who at most could possibly be the C rank. Such was the reputation when you worked for the association like this. Kang would then throw a punch to try and get Sung to let go, but that too would be dodged and lead to their first back and forth with each other. An impressive display of trades neither Song nor Juhi could keep track of. For Mr. Song, this wasn't the same E ranker he remembered, since
No, not
in
at
just
all.
the
Jesus
blink of an eye,
Christ.
Sung was now going blow for blow with the B ranker. As for Kang, this was an exciting turn of events he was fully intrigued by. He had no idea the association had such high-ranking hunters working for it. He did investigate every hunter participating in the raid with him, but none were supposed to be as powerful as Sung was. So when Sung revealed he was nothing but an E ranker, that very revelation was akin to a slap in the face for Kang. What I mean is that for someone who'd never lost in speed to any of his fellow B ranks, to do so to an E rank was just unfathomable.
Yeah, it's like that
He wasn't at the
can't
point
be
where he
a
was
thing.
losing just yet, but even the idea of an E rank keeping up was just as unbelievable to him. Especially one that worked for the association, since the hunters who did were always the weakest. This would lead to Kang's conclusion of reawakening, and for that he felt he was just unlucky. To him it was nothing but an unfortunate turn of events he felt he should have charged more money for. This brings us to the flashback with the person who hired him, and the initial offer was actually 2 billion won. A sum more than enough to take care of the criminals, but not so much to deal with the other hunters too. So, if Kang was to take care of these criminals, then the hunters with him would have to be taken care of as well. It was a job he had asked for an extra billion to complete. Had he known there was going to be a reawakened hunter joining him though, then Kang felt he should have asked for more money. Sung was no longer an easy target like all of the other hunters present.
That looks cool.
That being the case, Kang had actually tried to avoid a direct confrontation with Sung. In both the novel and the manhwa, he had made it seem like he was just trying to kill the criminals and offered to let them go if they promised not to say anything. This was preceded by a few statements which attempted to paint him like the good guy, and it was all in hopes it would get them to let their guard down. Of course, this was just so he could take care of them one by one later, so these words were nothing more than empty promises and lip service. An obvious lie Sung immediately picked up on, since the expression on Kang's face made it evident he was never gonna let any of them live. So, once it became clear a fight was inevitable, that's when Kang would activate his stealth skill. A trump card he believed would provide instant victory, since there was no way Sung could react to a target that was invisible. What Kang failed to realize, though, was that this decisive attack was exactly what Sung had been waiting for. You see, this entire time Sung was actually hoping to test the trigger for the emergency quest. He wanted to see what conditions would result in its appearance, and
That's interesting. It's like, what gives this as, like, yeah, so murderous intent, does it detect that? And then, okay.
in order to do that, he needed Kang to strike first. So, by denying Kang's offer, then acting a little panicked, Sung had manipulated Kang into jumping straight into a killing blow. Exactly what he wanted, since now he'll get a reward for doing all this.
Oh, sneaky
Yes,
bastard.
Kang's stealth was a bit of a surprise for him, but after focusing his senses and concentrating on his surroundings, Sung could easily detect Kang's presence even with his eyes closed. It was
Whoa.
another perk of having raised his perception stat. Before, this was only to determine whether he should run from an enemy or not, but now he discovered he could use it for this. It was actually the determining factor in Sung's victory here. Had it not been leveled up, then Sung knew he would have lost to Kang immediately. In any case, the fight would proceed pretty much as we saw, but once again the novels removed any part making it seem like Sung was losing. He simply used dash to keep up in speed, then bloodlust to gain the edge and assure his victory. The anime portrays this effect particularly well, since the way the novel describes it is as if Kang had been submerged in water.
Right, so they're
His
using
body
that
felt
as a-
heavy and
wow,
he
doing
couldn't
it,
move the
showing
way
a
he wanted to anymore.
physical
Such were the
metaphor.
effects of a 50% decrease to all his attributes. Kang knew his only hope was an all-out attack the next time Sung charged at him, but this too was a move Sung predicted from him. He knew Kang would be panicked and resort to a last-ditch effort, and as such threw his body into a deciding blow too. The difference between him and Kang, though, was that because Sung was anticipating this kind of counterattack, he knew to dodge first, then put everything into finishing the fight after, resulting in him just barely missing Kang's dagger, then following it up with that stab to the chest like how we saw in the anime. The post-fight had much less dialogue since Kang died relatively quickly, but there was something he whispered to Sung right before he did die. We don't know what it is until later, but it's something that ties to the grim scene coming up shortly.
Right.
Before that, though, I just want to talk about what it is Sung meant when he said part of him died, and to me I think it was something like his compassion or pity. Since we know the system needs him to be stronger,
Yeah, but the system seems to be making him strip like parts of himself away. It's if it's trying to forge him into something that's not human.
perhaps part of that is removing any bit of sentiment which it likely sees as a weakness. I mean, he's clearly not as bothered by killing as he was before, and I'm sure that feeling is gonna be all but gone the stronger he gets. As Sung said it himself, he feels like something's destroyed within him every time he gets stronger. Now, as if to emphasize that very statement, after dismissing the others and proceeding to the boss, Sung would come across one of the prisoners still tied up. His presence was one Sung had detected before he had even fought Kang, and it was only confirmed when Kang himself mentioned he had left him there. Apparently, he was waiting to kill him in the most painful way possible, but it was before he could that Kim and the others would show up. This was the final thing Kang whispered before he died, and it was pretty much a message passing on his job to Sung. In the manhwa, the prisoner's vocal cords had been cut, but in the novel he was capable of talking just fine. Enough that when Sung had asked if he remembered the girl he assaulted, rather than denying it or pretending to not know anything, the criminal would instead just say, "Which one?" I don't know if it was the panic or the situation he found himself in, but the criminal had zero sense to think about why it was Sung was asking him this. He was instead more focused on getting untied and was still in a panic from the potential of Kang getting him. So, when the criminal turned back to ask if Sung was related to one of the victims, not only was this even more stupid than not denying he did it, but it also confirmed his crime wasn't just limited to one victim. He had just admitted to Sung that he was a monster who used his powers to violate multiple
evil
women.
man.
This was all Sung needed to hear, so after gagging him again and dragging him away from the entrance, it was then that the prisoner realized what it was Sung had in store for him. By the time the two were at the boss room entrance, the prisoner who was only just acting all aggressive was now trembling in fear, groveling in his own piss. Reason being that the enemies of the boss room weren't just these weak goblins anymore. They were an enhanced version of goblins called hobgoblins,
Whoa.
the type that were known for their love of human organs. So, the criminal knew exactly what it was awaiting him in there, and for Sung it was a fitting end to a person so disgusting.
Wow, that's
He
sick.
simply watched as the struggling prisoner got eaten alive right in front of him. Eventually, his focus shifted to something a bit more important, since behind all the carnage was the boss watching all its minions. It was sitting alone on the other side of the room, undefended as the other hobgoblins devoured their food. Sung used Dash to appear right in front of it, and before the boss could even know what was happening, it had already lost its head and been defeated.
Oh my god.
Sung's plan of using the prisoner as bait had worked. He was able to take care of the boss without any risk to himself whatsoever. The rest of the hobgoblins were killed just as easily, and by the time all were dead, Sung had leveled up twice. He was level 27 and on his way to level 30 now. It turns out hobgoblins give way more XP than goblins, since their difference in strength is actually quite noticeable.
Right, cool.
In fact, if a low-level squad had spent the entire raid fighting only these weak goblins, then the leap in strength of the boss here might have been fatal to them. Had they gone in expecting more of the same, then that sudden spike in difficulty would have been a nasty surprise for sure. It was yet another indication you could never predict what could happen in the dungeon. The only absolute in the world of hunters was a power strong enough to overcome all this chaos. So, whether it be magic beasts or hunters themselves, Sung knew he needed to continue obtaining power to protect himself, both himself and the people he cared for. Now, Sung would wait until the last minute before exiting the dungeon because, while it was to make sure every essence core was obtained, he didn't want the association going in to investigate anything. There was a chance that if they did, they could have found out what happened to the other survivor. So, with that leaving only 3 witnesses, the rest was a matter of everyone getting their stories straight. Luckily for them, the person who hired Kang had turned himself into the police. He had waited for confirmation that Kang did his job, then confessed to everything immediately after. The client was the president of a massive company, so that explains why he was able to afford so much.
Right, that's why
The
he got
rest
money.
was pretty much as we saw, so that's everything you missed from episode 9. If you enjoyed hearing all these details, then feel free to leave a like since they really do help the video. You can also comment your rating if you want to be part of the weekly Any News community tab. Now, don't forget the Level Up collection is only available for 3 weeks, so if you want to secure your Mugen shirt, hoodie, or hat, then be sure to do so before we archive the collection forever. Not only does it help to support the channel, but it'll directly support making more incredible collections just like this one. But anyway, as always, thank you so much for watching, and if you enjoyed this type of anime content, then you already know what to do. So, until next time, ciao!
Very cool. Very cool. Very interesting. That last bit where he uses him as bait on the boss is so cool. That's dark as that. Wow. Oh, it's like I said, if you want to see my reaction to the actual episode itself, links in the description to the Patreon page. So yeah, thank you to my patrons. If you want to have your name at the end of every video, I want to be able to watch patron-only reactions such as Solo Leveling and the original Dragon Ball series. Link is in the description to the Patreon page. $1 a month is all I ask to help support the channel. It's greatly appreciated for that. Thank you all for watching. What do you guys think of that? What do you guys think of this? Click like, subscribe if you haven't already. Leave comments down below. Let me know what I should want to discuss in future videos. I'll see you guys next time.